What's up, guys? Welcome back to our Tin Soldier Tuesday podcast. Maybe while you're here, you can help us brainstorm and have a better name,
Yeah. Tin Soldier Tuesday is a bit long.
Yeah, it's too much.
Yeah.
Let's see, Tin Soldier, TST.
TST, baby.
Then you can get the pow.
So you guys can hear that.
TST. Got it. So yeah, we're just going to continue our conversation that we were having with Joren. And we'll just, to your point, we'll just jump right into it.
Yeah.
We were kind of talking about at the end of our last conversation about just how everything in life is truly linked together. You think that it's unrelated, and then you really get into it and you kind of figure out like, man, like all these things that I thought weren't that important, like really were, quickly for me. Like before we started this, I worked as a customer service representative at two different companies. So I typed on the phone and, talked to people. And then I worked as a welder, and then I worked as a youth pastor. Well, I did the youth pastor first. And now I feel like everything I do is kind of wrapped up into one, because I'm talking on the phone, I'm customer service rep, right? Like know how to put the orders in. I can type real good.
Teleservice days just paid off. People yelling at you about their bills.
People still do that. And then I do some stuff, try to motivate people, and then every once in a while I weld. So it all worked out.
It all morphed into one. Yeah. I mean, even in that, I'm always talking about the Bible, but like it's really like, it just reminds me, it's just how God works. Like it really kind of isn't a surprise that it all kind of like this random event to that random event. And then in hindsight, like that hindsight's 2020. I really think it's just because that's like literally the Bible. Like if you flip to a random part in the Bible, you're like, what's going on here with this random story of this dude buying land or these people fighting these people, whatever's happening through it. But then when you go real big picture, when you study those in depth and then look big picture, you realize that like it was all connected for a purpose. Like God, none of it was just random and get chucked out. Like it all connected somehow to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Kind of like this continual red thread. And like that was all leading to Jesus, but that doesn't stop with Jesus. Like now we're on this side of Jesus in history, and like that God still works the same way. It still is like, it seems random to us, and we're like, I don't know why I want to ride dirt bikes, or I want to race cars, or I want to weld, or whatever. Like me coming into the story on the last podcast, so like coming into the shop to weld, I was not going in to learn how to weld because I thought, wow, this is going to be what I want to be my trade and career, and I'm going to do this for years and have a job. Like none of that was the intention at the start. It was just like, I just like motorcycles, and I can't figure out how to connect these two pieces of metal on my motorcycle, and someone's got to weld it.
Might as well be me.
I'll learn. It's hard. I don't have any money to pay someone to weld it. I'll learn to weld it, and this is how I'll do that. It's like this snowball effect, but then that decision in hindsight changed my life, and so it's like, I don't know. We went deep fast, but that was like, that's how it works,
Well, and that's it. Like we had this conversation a lot when you were younger. You've always been a bit of an overthinker.
Yeah.
And I don't think you really are anymore. You probably calmed that down a bit.
Maybe not in this area, but other areas, I just keep digging, man. And I just dig why, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah, when Jordan lived in the basement, it was more like I would just kind of encourage him, like, hey man, God loves you. He doesn't really care what you do. As long as you do it for him, we'll work the rest of it out. Yeah. And, for you, if you're watching, like, don't overthink God's plan for you. Like, just love people, and then see, and say yes to things that make sense, and yes to things that make you excited.
Yeah.
And just keep loving people through it. And just, it's amazing where you'll end up.
I mean, I don't know if I said this on the last one or not, or some other time, but like, again, we're going back to the Bible, but it's just all in my head right now. And like, so there's a verse in the end of Genesis that says like, for what man meant for evil, God used for good. And I always rest in that when making decisions now, because God knows our heart. And so I'm like, well, if God can use man's most evil intentions to ultimately, in the scheme of history, bring good, to some extent, to some angle, can bring good, then he certainly can use our good intentions and our good heart postures and desires for good.
Yeah.
So I just rest in that, because like when I look at like, oh, should I do this or not? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's some decisions there that like it's kind of obvious, like, oh, that's a bad decision based on any standard of decision making. Yeah. But like, if I'm like, oh wow, like, yeah, the Australia thing, like, should I go or not? And there was all this overthinking on like, do I leave? Do I not? Do I, what about this? What about, there's a billion angles you can go into. But when I rested in that verse and I was like, wow, like, well, the whole reason I want to go to Australia is I want to know God better. I want to understand better. And I want to be able to love people that maybe a lot of people aren't going to love. And so I was like, I want to help. I want to help somehow. So I know God can certainly use that kind of desire. And like anyone watching, if someone's like, well, should I or should I not? Well, if it's a good outcome for someone else or to grow you, then like God can certainly use that desire. If he can use man's evil desire, he can certainly use that desire.
Absolutely. And like, you know, the thing that we say in everything that we do, like, you don't have to believe to belong. So like, we're going to have, obviously, our conversation. Joren just got done studying the Bible. Like, you read it front to back, what, 5 times?
Yeah. And it's just, I think in what I do, it's kind of the centerpiece.
Yeah,
like
and it is.
Yeah.
And it, you know, and it's really, you know, it's the centerpiece of a lot of what we do. But we never want people to feel alienated from that, of, you know, that just because we don't think alike doesn't mean that you can't get something from this conversation, that you can't, you know, we hope that, you know, it leads you closer to, you know, what God thinks of you. But if it doesn't, that's okay too. Like, we're just here to have this conversation. And I don't know, I think when we kind of left off, you were talking about studying the Bible for that long. That's not, I mean, like, people say that they would want to do that, but like actually doing that is a whole different.
I mean, during the middle of it, I didn't know if I wanted to do it. I was pretty toasted.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting that you went over there to do, you know, you thought that you went there for like this great work for other people. Well, then because of the way that the world with COVID and all that stuff, you ended up just really working on yourself. And
I mean, that's crazy. Like, that whole time, COVID was like, it's so weird, because at the time I hated it. I was like so angry at myself, at the world situation. I was just angry at the world. I was angry at God, because I was like, I stepped out to be able to go to these people to help. Like, I left the job I love. I left my family, my friends, all this stuff. And I was like, and then I'm stuck in a house with like 10 other surfer dudes, like literally can't leave. We couldn't even go grocery shopping. You know, you had to like designate a person to go grocery shopping, go there, get your stuff, all this stuff. And so like, I was just so upset with the situation and with God. And then I moved on, you know, and then COVID kept stringing me along. And every time they'd put us in another lockdown, they'd put us in another, borders are closed, another year, whatever. It was so discouraging. And then you mope, and then I'd get over it and then keep trucking. And then like, but it's so, again, hindsight, it seemed like random events. But then like looking back, I'm like, man, God was like, and he still is. Like, I feel like I'm like chomping at the bit. I'm trying to go. I'm like, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do that. But like, I've just so learned that it just, if you keep jumping to the next, like, you got to like kind of, there's a preparation time for that, you know. And now experiencing what I have in some countries and getting immersed in these situations, seeing that like, man, those times during COVID when I just had to sit around and study and really focus, and it felt like a very inward time, not a very outward focused time, which was very frustrating considering what I went to do. They became foundational for that. And like, I've just learned so much in this whole thing we're talking about, like pursuing God's plan or the plan for your life, or this, everyone's asking the question, what am I here for? What do I do?
That's it doesn't matter what you believe.
Yeah.
The biggest question of humanity is that.
I mean, I think if you believe in God, it's what am I here for? What am I doing? Even if you believe in God, you're probably just asking, what does God want me to do? What am I here for that God wants me to do? You just add that. And like,
yeah, it's just an addition.
yeah. And I think I learned through that time that like, I'm such a charger in the way that like, if you looked at my life, if I could see my whole life and God was like, man, the most impactful thing you're going to do in your life is be a high school teacher. I know that I would be like, well, all right. If he told me the whole plan, I'd be in Australia going, well, if I'm going to be a high school teacher in inner city and that's where I'm going to impact, I better leave Australia, go back home, go to teaching school, whatever, university. And just like, if this is the plan, I would like beeline to it. But the way I've learned that it works is that it's like, no, you follow the passions, these things, and you kind of go to here, you do missions, do this, you learn this, you build cars, you do all these things to where if you looked at the grand scheme of your life, you trickle down this big crazy loop or path to become the high school teacher, because then at that point, you're the high school teacher you were meant to be. You're not just a high school teacher. You're the high school teacher that will bring impact. You're the, in that example.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, the thing that my brain always like, my personal journey of, I worked as a pastor for a bit. I went to Bible college, all these things. And I kind of, I got derailed from that a bit. And I don't know, I was probably a little upset with God, right? Of like some of the stuff in my life. And I found rest that Jesus went to work. Like we don't think about that. Like that Jesus, the way that you and I believe the Bible is, Jesus didn't really do quote unquote public ministry until he was 30, and he only did it for 3 years. So from, 0 to 30, he was living life as an everyday tradesman, basically, and going to work and manufacturing products to sell to people.
Dude, hard work too.
Yeah, real hard work.
Yeah. I mean, that time carpentry would have included a lot of like stonemason type stuff as well, and like no power tools.
Yeah.
Like that's tough.
Yeah, imagine like what that dude's, he was,
Dude, Jesus had to have been jacked. Like, he had rough hands, I bet. Like, yeah. Which like plays into, I think at the time, the whole countercultural part of like, this guy's so loving, so kind, like, it would have just added to that even more. Like this jacked, rough-handed guy, like caring for the poor and the needy. It just breaks people's brains to see that.
Yeah, because when we think of Jesus, we think of this, and I'll pick on Rick a little bit because, Rick can come into the conversation. We were talking about the other night. It's like, well, Jesus wasn't. He's like, he's not a blonde hair, blue eyed, or whatever with sheep sitting on him and some kids. Like that's what a lot of times our brain goes to. But my Jesus, not to say he's on the front row of a Leonard Skinner concert or whatever, but I think of him a bit different, right? Like I think of that dude that is waking up every morning early, providing for his family, because we know that like his earthly dad died when he was young. So like he would have been the one in charge of the household and going out to his shop first thing in the morning and like getting his tools ready. And I don't think they drank coffee back then, but maybe he had a
Middle East, man. Coffee's been around the Middle East for a long time.
I don't know. Who knows? And just getting his day started and thinking about the people that he had to work for and how he was going to carry himself through that work. And I don't know, it's a fascinating thought for me. Right. So, and anytime you want to jump in, Rick, you're good. Yeah. But
I mean, I think that when you say that, it just makes me think of like Jesus was Jesus before the 3 years of ministry Jesus we see. Right. Yeah. So like, what he was doing in his day was stonemason, carpentry, all this stuff. But like, it's just crazy to think about how he did that, right? Because it says like he was without sin, like he was, so that means that whole 30 years of business, like he didn't cheat anyone. Like he was so, I love the integrity side of it, of like how did Jesus operate business?
Yes, that
He didn't take
think about that a lot.
shortcuts. He didn't cut corners. I mean, I'm saying he didn't because he couldn't have, because that would have been lying or that would have been cheating. And if we believe the Bible is truth, then we know he didn't do that. And so then it's like we don't get a lot of insight in the Bible to what Jesus' business was like. But we know he has brothers. We know he had family, and that he was like, he was providing to some extent for that. And it's cool to think about the integrity side, the business side, the quality side of everything he would have done.
Well, and like that, like I think we focus, obviously the vocal point of the Bible is we see, through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, like more of his 3-year journey. And I think, what a lot of people get wrapped up in is seeing that 3-year journey and thinking that they have to go to the other side of the world because of this. But for me, and not that is not important, because it is, but the time where I'm at personally in my life is I'm wanting to understand the first 30 a lot better, and like, I don't know, I want to know that. It's just an interesting thought.
Yeah. And it's just interesting to think about like what Jesus promised to his disciples. Like when he left them, the order he promised them was very interesting. Is he's like, he said he'd send his spirit on them, like his Holy Spirit, like, he won't be with them physically, but he'll send it with them, and it will start to expand through them. They'll start to do crazy things through their town, through their region, to the ends of the earth. And at that time, the ends of the earth to them would have been the Mediterranean area. That's all they knew of, was basically the Roman Empire, Mediterranean area. So like it grows, a small thing into a big thing. And like Jesus talks about that so much through those books you just mentioned. He talks about a small thing that with God has big effect, like a small rock in a pond, a big ripple. And that's kind of what you're saying is like, you don't have to like go to the other side of the world or start the next biggest organization or the next biggest church or something like that to do something for God, or to even live how God asks us to live, because like his ways are just, they call it the upside down kingdom, because everything in our world teaches us that bigger's better.
Yeah.
So we automatically associate, well, if God's going to be happy with me, or if I need to do anything meaningful in my life, it has to be huge. But like what I've realized just personally is I thought the same. Like I was like, all right, well, I want to pursue God. I'm going to go to it's literally almost, if you look on a globe, where I'm at is almost the other exact end from Kentucky. I didn't go there on purpose. I told the story of that because of that reason. But I came in with this expectation that like I've made a big move, so now I'm going to do big things. But big thing, the definition of that's kind of relative. And so like I've just learned through that, though. It's funny because like that process we were talking, God had to kind of like slow me down and open my eyes a bit to realize that the big things that God's concerned with is what a lot of us would consider the little normal things. It's like truly caring for the person in front of you, truly not thinking yourself, but thinking about others, and like with your money, with your time, with your treasures, with your, all your stuff. And it's the things that Jesus came to teach weren't necessarily what the world would say are the big stuff. Go start the next huge operation. Yeah. It was, man, care for the person that's in front of you wholeheartedly, and really listen, really love, really be kind. Display the ways of God, and
don't talk about them, display
don't talk about them. Yeah. Like, I mean, I heard this thing recently that was like so powerful, as he was talking about like everyone loves the Bengals. This is a side note, but this is crazy. Like when I left, no one gave a rip about football, dude. And I get back and like my friends that were like skate park kids, moto, race car people, like in my mind, so apart from the world of football, are like checking their phones while we're riding dirt bikes. They're at the motocross track watching football.
Dylan Rose.
Yeah. Sellouts.
Yeah. And then I'm like, what happened? Like,
How did we get here?
when did this happen? And anyway, though, but like it made this dude I was just listening to, I can't remember his name. Brad actually sent me the podcast and it was really good. But he was talking about that, like, everyone's so passionate about the Bengals or about football or their team, but like standing in that stadium watching the football game doesn't make you a football player. You know what I mean? Like you can wear it, you can talk about it. You know, everyone uses the term like my team, our team. Yeah. He's like, but really like you're just watching. You know what I mean? And so like kind of what I'm saying is he said this, he tied it to Christianity because like you said, don't talk about it, but it's like doing these actions, really loving, not just saying you're a loving person and then flipping people off when they cut you off and not calling anyone out for that. But you know what I mean? Like really living behind what you say is the same way as like going to church and like calling yourself a Christian, talking about all the things about God, all this stuff doesn't make you any more a Christian than going to a football game makes you a Bengals player. You know, it just doesn't, you know,
it's not the same.
Yeah, like you can love something, you can love the idea of something, like you can love the idea of being a kind, loving person because we all want to feel good about it. But the big things in God's eyes are when you actually do it, like act on it, you know, and that may be going the other side of the world to love people no one else is loving or to pursue a thing maybe, but it also might be just chilling with the dude at your work that like is having a hard time. And really just showing God's love, living a message instead of preaching a message. And I think that's a big thing I've realized the past few years. It's like, because at the end of the day, no matter where I'm at in the world, it boils down to that. No one cares if you go to their remote island, if you show up and you're just a jerk to them. Like that defeats the purpose. Like you go there to do these things, you know? And like, yeah. So.
You know, what are, we can get into this a bit. Like, you met a nice lady.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She swooped you right off your feet.
She did. Took me like 8 months to swoop her off hers, but
that's normal. But you really had to do some convincing, you know.
Yeah, just playing the long game. It was rough.
Yeah, Rick and I sent her some money.
Yeah, thanks for that. I didn't know if the tides were ever going to turn.
Yeah, we got it. We pushed her in the right direction. Yeah, it really helped you.
It did. I was like, oh man.
So, you know, so now you're engaged.
Yeah.
Which is really awesome.
Yeah.
And she's actually out in the front room working.
Chilling in the lobby, yeah.
Yeah. And she's awesome, man. We really love her. It's really been great to get to know her. And we're threatening to call in some threats to Australia and say it's from these guys so that they can't go back. But now like transitioning into what you guys are doing as a couple, what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we had talked about this earlier, and I knew we were going to talk. It's like, I think what we do is so much different stuff. Like, it's really hard to just say, like, this is what it looks like. But on the bigger thing, our heart is for this movement or this need, whatever you want to label it as. It's labeled as ending Bible poverty. So, like, to a lot of people, they're going to be like, that sounds like the most ridiculous thing. But, like, we believe in the Bible as truth, and so we believe in Jesus as truth, and we see that Jesus provided a physical, he provided physical need, but he also met, like, a spiritual and emotional need. And so, like, Laura has a degree in development, like international development. And so her perspective on what we do, so we do missions, and her perspective on that, as we've talked about already, like just with ourselves, is it's so different. She's really highlighted to me, like, when we think of missions, like what me and Laura do, people probably watching probably hear Christian missions and think of like a mud hut in Africa and we're giving people food or something. Like, that's epic, and we want to do that. People, it's like they need those things. But what she's opened my eyes to is that so many, almost all the organizations in development and missions, this sphere of the stuff, is that they'll meet the physical need and then dip. Because meeting, honestly, it's harsh, but meeting the physical need is easy. It's an easy problem solution. You're like, well, they need fresh water. How do we get fresh water? We dig a well. see you later. And that's awesome because it checks the physical need. But what Laura's made me realize is that it doesn't help with the emotional state of what they're dealing with. It doesn't really help them on how to adapt to a new lifestyle of having fresh water there when for generations before them, they've had a process. It doesn't meet their emotional or spiritual needs. So we're trying to combine it and do it all. You know what I mean? Like, and like what our heart is to do is like, when we go teach the Bible, like we're not only just walking up, preaching, teaching the Bible to whoever and then rolling out. Like we do physical work as well. We do a lot of mix, but our heart is to go to these places and do these things in a way that holistically helps them, really.
And it's more of a sustainable.
Yeah. And so even in our teaching stuff, we're mainly focusing on teaching the Bible to like pastors and churches in these small areas or developing countries, or even first world, European, North American, and Australian students that come to the Bible school we teach on. The heart is that they'll understand this and disperse, like go out from that and be able to do the same thing. And so when I say end Bible poverty, the goals are, one, that if we believe the Bible is truth, like anyone that wants one, we want them to be able to have a Bible in their own language. That requires a lot of work of like translating and dialects and all these things. But if they want it, that they could have it. That's first step. But also ending the knowledge poverty on like, okay, but if they have it and they can't read and they don't know what it means and no one's there to tell them, then it doesn't do much.
Yeah.
So it's giving them the physical, but also being around and trying to find ways to find a long-term sustainable way to see it through and walk with them through the process. Because I mean, like, you think about people that have believed something or have grown up with a way of thinking, and then they decide to change their life and change their way of thinking, and they decide, usually that's not us. Like, usually we're not there for that moment, but they decide to follow God, but then they have no idea how. Then that's big, like in a lot of different cultures.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And one, I think, talking to your fiance, it was to hear what her degree was, to hear her heart for missions and how that worked, and some of the points that she brought up. Even, and I'll pick on myself, even to be a guy that's, I gave my life to Jesus when I was like 7. To hear some of the things that she said, I'm like, man, I've never thought about it quite like the way that because she's seen it.
Yeah.
And like seen, the hurt that we've caused from doing it wrong. And it's just really powerful to think about that. And I do agree with you. The Bible poverty is not just something that happens on the other side of the world. It happens here.
Yeah.
Like if you say that and even you coming home, like, listening to you talk, I'm like, man, you've just developed so much because you've spent so much time in it. And which is beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to listen to. And I'm like, man, we all, if you say that you believe this, we all need more work. We need to work, point blank. We need to work so that we can love other people effectively and know what we believe, and that, I mean, and I can even bring Rick into this conversation a bit. Like, he always is a beautiful challenger of making, thinking through stuff, which I don't know if you have something, but.
No, not yet. No.
No, not yet.
Well, I've had a lot of thoughts, definitely. I want to contribute in a constructive way. And everything has been great. I am enjoying this conversation very much. It's kind of an extension of, the other night at your house. And
and I kind of thought it might end up.
It's hard for me to tap in on it, though, because that whole part is missing, without us diving. But
I mean, for some background, we, at Jason's house, we had this awesome conversation with the three of us, and Laura was there, a few others were there, just about this whole thing, about bringing Christianity or a belief system to anyone that might not prior have that. And I feel like Ricky just has so many good thoughts. You just about maybe some gray areas or good perspective on that.
Yeah.
And
I think whatever you do, the thing that I've noticed a lot with anything, whether it's Christianity, building race cars, family life, whatever, you have to be willing to have hard conversations and really, really look at it. And like you said, it's easy, as people that do live in America, we're obviously we're really privileged to live here. And like you see a need of like, okay, these people need water. That is an easy fix, right? Like you just throw some money at it and it can fix it, right? Like that's easy.
And it's a good thing. Like good, I don't want anyone to take away from this like, well, we shouldn't be meeting physical needs. We shouldn't be. That's awesome. But like there's a lot more following that maybe I feel like a lot of people are putting a lot of work into that, but in history, at least, if we look very general, maybe has not been cared for much.
Well, and I think the hard thing is to really rub shoulders with people and back to the whole thing of really, really loving people.
Yeah.
Like really loving them and like not thinking the same way and loving people through that and wanting to have that intimate relationship with people.
Yeah.
That takes years.
Yeah.
And I don't think like a lot of times in anything that we do, even if, when you wanted to weld, you wanted to probably, and we all did, and when I wanted to learn how to weld, I wanted to pick up this welding rod and this torch that I've never used before and instantly be able to post welds on Instagram. That's what I wanted. Yeah. But in reality, that took years.
Thank God for Pulse.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
That transition, though, it took years of really having an intimate relationship with that welder and understanding how to use it and, whatever.
Well, I mean, I really believe that at the core of everyone, no matter what you believe, everyone wants to be their life to count for something. Everyone wants to be impactful. Everyone wants to have a mark. They want to leave their mark. But I've just realized, like, when I went to Australia, I did all that course. And after that, I agreed to my visa's currently go in 2-year segments. So I agreed. I was like, sweet, I'll volunteer in this missions organization for 2 years and I'll leave. But as the 2 years started to come up, like there's a lot of things, I realized like it's hard to make a big difference in 2 years. And it's that same thing. It's like, just like we ended the last podcast on with the process of a race car, testing and tuning and building and figuring out and problem solving, like when it comes to relationships with people, to really leave them in a better place than you found them, like it's a process. Like that's what I was saying. Everything with God and everything we talked about earlier, it's a process. Like nothing is overnight, but like all of us want overnight. Like, and that's why like it's still a good thing to provide the physical need, the fresh water, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's it's the fast one. It's easy because you look at like, let's just look on a money standpoint. Like everyone's like businesses, big development projects, organizations, there's a heavy focus on that. Like let's provide this, let's do that, let's fix hunger, this. And that's good stuff, right? Like people need that. But you can give that. And if you're like, hey, I need money to go give these people fresh water, that money gets dumped into that like crazy, or not fresh water, but a need like that, it's crazy. But if you're like, well, these people are in a bad spot and I'm just full time, I'm going to go spend time with them. I'm going to be there. I'm going to listen. I'm going to help them in what they need, do physical things that would help them, anything like that, that doesn't get any funding because it's long and it's not glamorous. And especially today with social media, we're all about quick and good looking. And so like, you can't advertise that. Like, what am I going to advertise? Like, oh, how have you spent the last year? It's like, well, I've been with this random group of people, like I've told you about that trailer park I love going to. It's just something about it. I just love, it's this trailer park in Australia. They got a deal. They joke that this town where it's 30 minutes from where I live. They call it the armpit of Australia. And there's a deal with this little trailer park there that there's a contract with the park that when someone gets out of prison, that's the first place they go. And if they can't make it there, they're homeless. And so like, I go down there and I want to give a physical need because I want to help them and I want to bridge the gap. I'm not doing much in that way. Like I go down, make bacon, egg sandwiches and we hand them out.
Hey bro, bacon, egg.
Yeah,
really
everyone loves it, man. We try different stuff. They don't want it. They just want bacon, egg sandwiches. So like we go down. Yeah.
Bacon, egg sandwiches.
But like, you at first you're just like, cool, this is good. And then you do it a while and you're like, what are we really doing? Yeah, it makes you feel good that you gave some people some bacon, egg sandwiches, but like, that's a me thing. It's not actually probably helping them much. But you go down there enough and then you start getting to know the same people. And then I just don't even now, like, it sounds bad, but like a lot of times other people cook the bacon, egg sandwiches and hand them out. I go walk around all the trailers and just say hi to the locals and go sit with them and talk. And that's where like these crazy, man, we just gets nuts. Like that's where, not that tears mean it's all so good, but that's where it opens up, and I went for months and nothing happened. And I was like, what am I even doing this for? I'm not helping anything. Like I'm not really, but then I felt to go on Christmas Day just to go hand out nowhere. I couldn't get bacon, eggs anywhere because everyone was closed. So I made pancakes and then like handed out pancakes. I just walked around. It was like, I think it was me. I don't know if Laura was there. There was like maybe 2 of us or something, and walked around, and it was like that was the turning point because like had nothing to do with the food. What they needed was someone to listen. All of them were in a hard spot and just want someone to hang with them, to make them feel valued, to listen. And on Christmas Day, I don't know. I feel like God was really intentional with like, I was really stirred up. I was like, I don't know why. I got to go on Christmas. I'm going Christmas morning. I'm going to feed them pancakes and hang out and I'm going to walk around. And I just sat in so many of their trailers and just for hours and you just listen and like, just talk, nothing crazy. And man, they just broke down and that's where it really started to open my eyes that like, I want to give people what they need, but I also like more than that. That's a bridge to what they truly need.
Yeah.
And like, and so I'm not really sure where I'm going with that, but basically.
Well, I think that everyone, regardless of what you believe, people want purpose and they want peace.
Yeah.
So like, like I think about this a lot. Like if I truly believe what I say I believe, I would really, really have to hate people to not try to give it away. Mm. And like, I know, and I'm not saying this in like whatever way, but like, I know not that I carry peace all the time, right? Like I'm not perfect at it. I have my, I've been stressed today, right? Like there was stuff that was happening. I was working through whatever, but like, I know how much peace I carry, and I would have to be such a mean person to not want to hopefully lead people into experiencing that same peace, and like, and the world needs way more peace. Mm. I mean, the world needs a lot, but like, I think like to your point, like it's a little easier to meet that, that physical need. But if everybody in the world, just for saying, had peace, the world would look completely different.
Well, and this is what we talked about at your house, is started the whole conversation, is like, whether you believe in God or not, everyone sort of talks about heaven and hell. You know what I mean? They kind of all, like it gets more intense when you get in Christian circles. People talk about it more. But even outside of Christian belief, heaven is a pretty general thought of place of paradise or whatever, and that's a big thing I've learned. And I believe a big misconception of Christianity is like if we look at what Jesus said, like he didn't talk a ton about heaven as this spiritual eternal retirement home after we live. He talked about heaven as something that, when you die, you'll be with God, but like that, he says that, but that also is a here and now thing. And is what you're saying, to the point you're making, is like the reason, a few things that came to mind as you're saying that is like, the reason I even do this, that like, the whole ending Bible poverty, people knowing about that, is that Because like whether it seems crazy to people listening about this, not, and what Jason always says, like, you know, you don't got to believe what we say or what to get something from it or not. But like at a certain point in faith, I've just rested that like, yeah, there might be things people disagree with. There might be not make sense to them, but we all have a choice, and I'm choosing to believe. Whether people think that's stupid or not, I choose to believe in God. And so that's my choice, and that's what I'm choosing to put my faith in Jesus and the words of the Bible. And so with that, you know, I see that and I'm like, all right, why is the Bible powerful? Because it's what it says. It's what Jesus is teaching. And I'm like, okay, why is that important? Because Jesus is teaching that heaven is something that can be here and now. You know, yeah, it is a thing. We're going to die. We're all going to die, you know, eventually. But like, and there will be a time then. But like, it's something that's here and now. And tying that all back into your point is that I believe that's really important, because the thing that stirs my heart is all the problems in the world. And you see the problems in the world and you're like, what is the greatest? This is a question I stew on all the time. What is the greatest problem in the world? And everyone has a different answer. You know, right now we have a terrible problem with sex trafficking, you know, like the mental effects of our phones. I mean, like, I know this is a touchy subject, but like, you know, pornography just got classified as the highest drug in the world because it's directly to your brain, you know, and I'm not taking a stance on whatever people want. I'm just saying it's studies are showing mess with your head, right? There's hunger problems, there's greed, there's government, there's all these things. But the root of that is evil, right? And so like, this is a big, crazy loop around. But what I'm saying is that the reason I do what I do, the reason it's so passionate is because I'm like, that heaven here and now, the ways of heaven here and now that Jesus talks about is the solution I see to that. Yeah. And so, because you think about, like, if we pictured, like, what would heaven be? We're like, well, imagine if every person, 7 billion, whatever people on the earth right now, lived exactly like Jesus truly lived. Not just talked about what Jesus did, not just said they were and then in the background didn't, but truly did. They were loving, they were selfless, they were kind, they were merciful, they were forgiving, they were all these things. If everyone did that in every circumstance to each other at all times, it would be heaven. Yeah. And like, that's the bigger reason on why I have gone and do this. Because it's, as far as I can understand, like, I don't got the ability to solve the world's problems, but I know that if people had that peace you're talking about, had that security, not this insecurity of defending and angry and but really had this reality, then like, I really believe like it would at least help, if nothing else, you know?
No, I agree. I think that, like, I think a lot about, and this is kind of getting pretty deep, but like, I think a lot about even what we do. Oh, sorry, that's my kids. Can you hear them on the thing?
Nope. Okay.
I think about a lot of what we do, and like, you know, like, there's pretty minimal criticizing, but you know, it happens. And like, I'm not perfect. Like, we're not perfect. Like, Tin Soldier Racecars is not perfect. Like, you know, like, we do stuff wrong all the time.
Shady business deals.
Rick sees them all.
I see the dirt.
People coming through the back. And But the reality is like, I'm trapped by this thought of like, I want to leave this world better than when I came, right? Yeah. Like, whatever I can do to make it better, and like, better for my kids, better for the people that we're interacting with. And not that I'm going to hit that nail on the head all the time, but my heart is to try to make it better and love people through it, and try to give people tools that I've had that, you know, that have made it better for me. You know, like, like, if you take this shop, for example, and you could really speak to this, is like, when we first started, we had like no tools. Yeah. Right. Well, now, like, you come in and, you know, in my opinion, your name is in the foundation of what you're always part of what we've done, what we're going to do. Your name's in the foundation of the building. And to come here now and see all the tools, how much easier would the job that you had at the time be?
Dude, you know how much, like, well, in my simple brain math, I used to go into trying to measure and cut a seatbelt bracket that would fit in the door bar and the B pillar bar, because like you'd be like, dang, we can make this trick little corner seatbelt mount that fit, but all those angles and trying to get the hole somewhere to where like it'd be like hours of just trying to figure out, like, I mean, some people, they might be like, that's stupid, you just make a thing and put it in there, but like, you know, I really wanted to get it right. And so like, but now I see that CNC machine and I'm like, dang, that thing's epic. Like you just, and yeah, exactly what you're saying, like just to see the growth. And even what you said, like you're not perfect. That's the thing I never want people to take away from, like, Christianity has a stigma about it of people that think they're perfect. And so whenever I say I'm a Christian, or it's hard to not say I'm a Christian with what I do in life, especially Australia, they hear my accent. They always, it's the same questions. They're always, no matter what I'm doing, I could just be like trying to surf and do my own thing. And they could be like, oh, I say, hey, and they hear it. Where are you from? America. What are you doing here? I'm like, I work with a Christian missions organization, teach the Bible. And then immediately they're like, all right, Christian. So then they have we go from there. And like, but you know, depending how they respond to that. But the worst part is that so many people have been hurt by Christianity is that they automatically assume I'm this arrogant, prideful guy that knows it all, that is perfect. Yeah. That thinks I'm perfect. And that's as far from the truth as it can get, because like, that's the hardest thing about this, right? Is like it gets deep, but the inner stuff is because I'm saying this, I'm like, man, you can't just talk about it, but I'm aware how many angles in my life and no one else might not know. You know what I mean? From the outside, it might be like, dang, that dude's super Christian or whatever. Yeah. But I know, you know, like I know where I'm not lining up with what I say I believe. Yep. And that's why I say it's like the process of a race car, because like it takes so much time to understand it, to see the point of, you know, it's not an overnight thing. We're coming back to that again. It's not an overnight thing. It's day after day of just like, dang, all right. But that's what's amazing about Jesus is you're not disqualified when you do it wrong. You know, he sees our heart. He's like, you, honestly, I don't even know if you remember this. You said the best thing to me that I've hung on to for years when I was down in the dumps making one of my stupid decisions. And you said something to me that you were like, you know, if your daughter, when she was trying to learn how to walk at that time, if she stumbled while trying to learn how to walk and looked up at you, there's no way you'd ever be like, you're a failure, you've disgraced my name, you're not worthy, leave my house, you can't come back until you can run perfectly. Like, you never say that. You dust her off, you encourage her, you say, I love you, keep trying to walk. And if she asked you, is it good to fall? You'd say no. But that doesn't mean she's wrong, like that doesn't mean she's bad. And like, keep encouraging her until eventually she is running, you know, and that's how God works with us. She was just beating on the door. Yeah. Eventually she runs right up and slams the window. Like, you know, and like, that's how I've always hung on to that. Like, man, that's how God sees us and how we walk with God. And like, so just to put it like, you know, we're far from perfect, like far. If anything, it just highlights more. I'm like, you know, it says to whom much is given, much is expected. Like, it puts fear in me talking about these things because I know that like, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to be someone. So like, if I talk about it, I got to live it. Yeah. Like, you know, I got to act on it. I can't just leave the spotlight or whatever, which I don't like being in anyway. And it like,
Ricky's got 3 of them.
Ricky's all these spotlights. My stress watch is telling me I'm peaking right now. Like, I'm just like, but like, you know, when no one's watching, it doesn't mean I can just like, all right, like spread a good message. So that's what matters. It's not about that. Like, you know,
no, it's the thing that I've, you know, working on myself for years of who am I when no one sees me? Like that's really that's who you are, you know? And I think, you know, if you take it from a Christian worldview, the thing that I see that most people struggle with is they don't want to be honest with even God about their failure. But the reality is that he already seen all of it anyway. So the sooner that you can be honest about who you truly are and the things that you need to work on, you know, that the sooner that you can work on it. And to put like a race car perspective on that, like a lot, they're in race car stuff, you got if we divide it in two groups, which there's way more than that, but like if you're talking no time and then you're talking class racing when there's a time on the board, like the no time deal, everyone just has an illusion of what they think, how fast the other one is. And then you'll go ask them one and they'll like tell you how fast that they just went. And you're like, I watched it go down the track. I'm pretty confident you didn't do that.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be truthful of what that number actually is. Right. Well, then you got the class racing side of it and you see it, right? There's no fudging the truth. This is the number. This is the number one guy. I know how fast that he went and I'm chasing it.
Yeah.
And like, for me, like I know what number's on the board because Jesus put the number up.
Yeah.
And I'm chasing that number. And I'm not, it'll never be there until the end, right? Like that's a whole other sanctification, talk. But like Jesus put the number up. We know what is expected. And we can either lie and say that we're going 420s, but we're actually going 460s, or be truthful for ourselves and like, man, I got a ways to go.
Yeah. And just accepting that like it's not wrong to acknowledge and be like, that like, all right, yeah, I got a way to go. Like I'm not perfect. Like I love one of the best things for me about growing in my faith to a confidence to where I can confidently say like, I choose this, whether people disagree or not, is that I'm okay with saying, I don't know, cause I'm okay with like, I don't actually know. I can act like I know all the stuff and you can bullcrap an answer. Like we all learned that in high school how to fluff a paper, but like,
now they even got that chat GPT. You don't even.
Yeah,
you
can AI really will fluff it for you.
You can really get down.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother topic. I don't want to get into AI stuff, but I realized that like I can't. Oh dang it! The AI got my brain all twisted, man. Like,
that's what it does.
That's what it does. Like, what was I talking about before that with fluffing? Like. Yeah, I don't know, but like the AI, dude, we've talked a lot about AI, and it gets me all like, oh no. But like I know, that's what I was saying. I don't know. I can act like I know. I really could. Like anyone can. We know those people. You know what I mean? Like you can find a way to answer it.
Yeah,
and it's anything. But saying I don't know is a really powerful thing. Because someone's like, well, what about this? What about that? Or even like just being able to say like, I'm not perfect and I'm really trying. As long as you're true-heartedly trying, like I'm trying and I know I don't get that. I don't get this, but I don't know. I mean, I love telling our students in the Bible school that because they're like, I love them. They're awesome. But sometimes they really try and stump you if you're the teacher. They're like, yeah, well, what about this? And I love it because you just like, I don't know. That's a good point. That's a good thought. I don't know. You should look into that and get back to me when you get the answer because that's a great question. And because like it's all faith. And like, so I think to your point, like being able to say the starting point with that, to that awareness of like, man, I'm not really doing it how I'd like to be. I'm not the person I'd like to be. I'm not as close with God as I'd like to be or this or that. Like, it's not I need to get perfect, then maybe I'll try that. It's just firstly acknowledging like, oh, well, I'm not all good.
Yeah.
Like, and we all got our things and I see that in Jesus that like he never asked any of the people he interacted with like, well, once you're perfect, then you can be with me. It was actually the people he was pushing against that were saying that message. They were saying you got to be perfect to belong. But like Jesus was totally the opposite. He's like, this isn't about getting perfect to then enter the kingdom of heaven. That heaven on earth we're talking about, that walking with God. It's like it's acknowledging. It was the people that acknowledged like, I'm not perfect and I need help. And that's the misconception of Christians. Cause like, I still don't understand that like so many people encounter a love from God that they can't explain. It changes their life. You see them change their behaviors, all these things. But then somewhere along the line, it picks up this idea that like, well, I've gone through a hard road and I've really got rid of a lot of crap in my life. So now I'm up here and now I'm good. Yeah. Other people need to get to this level, but that just never happens. That's just totally a illusion in people's heads. And
well, and like for me, man, like it's the love. Like I tangibly feel the love of God every day. Like I can feel that he loves me. Like I don't know. I can't explain it. It's this unexplainable peace that I know that like, and I do to talking about like the kid, you know, Zaya or Emmy or Brixton, whoever learning to walk and them looking up at me. Like I try to visualize myself looking up to God every day. Like one guy came up to me at the racetrack one time and he was like, hey, why do people, and he was genuinely curious. He was like, why do people bow their heads when they pray? And I'm like, well, because they're talking to a king and they're trying to be respectful. And I was like, but for me, a lot of times I'm lifting my hands up. Yeah. Because I want to be as close to that love of God as I can get. I want to be Brixton, or I want to be Zaya, like, or Emmy, just like, you know, Daddy, you know, like that's what keeps me going. You know, it's not all the questions that I've answered for myself. It's not the questions that I don't know. It's not even a worldview a lot of times, or it is that I know that God loves me. Yeah. And that sounds so simple and probably really stupid, but like, I just know that he loves me. Yeah. And I like that. Yeah. You know?
Well, and he loves our attempts. Like that's what I'm saying. Like he's not like this grudging, like, gosh, you're a mess. And if you could not just the get God right. Of the Simpsons. Yeah. Like he's not. And like I feel like so much has just gone so far from like, you know, I talked about at your house that like I read this book about church history on like how this whole deal started from small to big and from Jesus to COVID. This book is, you know, and anyone that is around my normal circles in Australia probably laughs if they hear that because I talk about it all the time. Because it was like, it sounds dramatic, but like probably one of the most heartbreaking books. Because you see these people given this simple, awesome thing and then try and do it their way. And it just becomes a mess, you know? And I just realized like, yeah, like it's forgetting that simple truth that at the end of the day, like God loves us. He's for us. He's awesome. Does that come with a responsibility of like, okay, well, I want to love him. I want to do it his way. And it's like changing our perspective because for so long I viewed the things of God, of Christianity, these things I learned and heard and stuff as like, these are what I can and can't do. And I was like, man, what is God like? He doesn't like fun. He doesn't like all these things. But it was just because I didn't understand who he was. And when I understood, I put the time in, like you were saying, I put the work in, I understand who he is. I realized that like, this has nothing to do with what I can and can't do. It's what God desires me to do and not do because he knows what's best for me. And he knows that these things are actually, even though might look like good, aren't good. You know, another example you gave me, again, like just these things I've held on to. Another example you gave me is when Zaya used to like to climb on the back of the couch and stand up on the top when there, you know, it wasn't against the wall or anything, it was a drop. And to her, that's a good thing. Like, sick. Like, you know, but you know, in the knowledge that you have that she hasn't yet to figure out, the understanding is that it is good until she falls and then it's bad. And then so the ultimate bigger thing is it could be bad. And so like with God, I've just learned like, man, it's not about some stickler up there that's some micromanaging crazy manager that's like, no, I want this and you can't do this. It's like he loves us so much. He knows what's best for us that it's like, man, trust me that looks good, but you actually don't want it because I see what you don't see and it could be bad. Yeah. And so knowing that God loves us is like the starting point of it all. And if you forget that, then you start mixing up what he actually was here for. What was he after? What is the purpose of all this? And yeah.
Yeah, that's when it gets dicey. you know, and unfortunately, the reason that people don't like Jesus most of the time is because of Christians or people or what they've done and or how they've done it. And like, it's really like, it's heartbreaking, you know, and a lot of the work that you're doing to bring it back to you and Laura is to come in and break those stereotypes and just love people. Like, again, it sounds so stupid and so like whatever, but I really, and we really love what you're doing because like to hear you guys explain it. And I know we've kind of went around in circles and all this stuff, but like you go and you love people and you try to walk the long road with them, which that is the hardest thing to do, is to actually walk out life with people that are on the other side of the world that whatever, like you're just trying to love them. And it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and that is it. Like you're just trying to, I feel like I don't want this to come off as prideful or not, because I know there's a lot of people doing awesome stuff.
Yeah.
But most of the encounters I've had with Christians in other nations, non-Christians asking questions, Christians in what we'd say Western nations, you know, no matter what the situation is, I feel like it's like we're almost, it's not what we're doing, but it has a feeling that you're almost like having to rewrite, you know, because so many people just hear things, see things that I always believe good intention with bad delivery. All the bad things we see at Christianity, you know, I'm sure there's a lot, probably bad intention, bad delivery, but like, you know.
Yeah, the guy selling the holy water. You know,
yeah, that kind of stuff, like, man. But like, you know, I just have to believe somewhere in there's some kind of, maybe not the holy water guy, but like a lot of these hurt people have received from Christians is done by someone that had a misunderstanding and then thought of something. Their good intention was that some part of it was super important.
Yeah.
So much so that they had a bad delivery of that because they just maybe focused on the wrong point, whatever. So like everyone, no matter Western, non-Western, you know, different nations, different thing, they all have, well, not some of them don't even know about Christianity. That's a whole different thing. It's crazy. But like that's meeting someone because we're so used to it here. But I feel like a lot of what our work is trying to come back to the start and the simplicity of like, let's not get bogged down in the weeds of all this stuff that's been said or thought of, or let's just go back to the simplicity of like, what does the Bible say?
Yeah.
Who is God? What does he say? And then we'll just stay there, you know, because again, it's the humility aspect of realizing that we don't actually know. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot we can know. I believe the Bible isn't an exhaustive and detailed thing of everything God's done in human history. So like, man, is the world 2,000 years old or is it 65 million years old? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to act like I do because like I like dinosaurs and I don't really know where that fits in. The Bible doesn't talk about them. To me, that doesn't discredit the Bible. It just shows me that the Bible isn't an exhaustive list of everything God's done in history. It's what God has preserved. Like I said last time, I've learned that the Bible wasn't written to me, wasn't written to Joren in 2023. It was written to people that God has preserved for a purpose. Yeah. I believe at that time inspired by him. He was, just like we said, you know, there's random events that in hindsight were a red thread working. I believe that's what God did with man when he made the Bible. And so it's not everything God ever did, but I believe it's what we need to have to understand who he is and trust him. That's basically it. And so like in that, I just trust him, you know, and I just realized that like, you know, like I don't know. And even though a lot of people have, I just have the humility to realize like, not bragging on myself, but I think it's important, like humility, like I actually don't know. And I'm not going to tell people I don't, and I'm not going to hurt them with forcing something. I don't know. All I know is God loves me, that I'm here by his grace, and that I have to choose to have faith in him, whether people think it's ridiculous or not. You know, they choose their thing. I'm choosing mine. Yeah. And I want them to choose it because I believe it's truth, and I believe that there's good things for them and that God really loves them and he created the world to know them. But you can't force a relationship on someone.
Yeah, you'll never, and I think that's what a lot of people miss is like, you know, when you read about Jesus and how he really lived, and like the dude never argued in it or argued with someone into Christianity. The only people he argued with was Christians,
Right?
And
the
like
people that should have known.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like that's it. Like you're never gonna fact check anyone to death. Like, and I think of that on both sides of the spectrum, bro. Like you're like, you know, if you think that God's not real, that's cool. And then if you think that God's real, rad, like, you know, but there's so many unanswered things on each side. Like, you know, I don't care, dude, if you're just like, I'm not that smart. And I'm just not, right?
I know that.
But there's so many things that my brain can't understand, that can't whatever. Like that's on either side of the coin that you know that you're with. Like there is a, you know, there's a logical end to our brain. That our brain will only take us so far. That's it, bro. Like it will take us to the end. And the end, I think, of where our human brain stops is there was nothing and then there was something. And,
right.
you know, then you get down to the age-old question of like, well, who created God then? Well, it's like, well, then how did the first thing happen? Like there is a end, dude. Like you're off the sand traps. You're at the end of the racetrack. Like, I guess at this point you're at the beginning. Like, there's no explaining it. Like, there's not. Like, I don't care how smart you are.
And that's like, I always think of it, the example I use, like, imagine trying to, not belittling us and saying humans are just this stupid program thing, but it's like, imagine trying to explain to an ant, knowing what we know as humans. Imagine a doctor trying to explain to an ant how to do brain surgery. Like, I don't care what he does to contextualize it for the ant. The ant can't contain that. Like, it's not in there, right? And everyone has their journey. I get that. For me, I've found rest in knowing that I'm not going to know. Not yet. Maybe one day. It says that, you know, one day all things that aren't known will be known, you know, and I get excited about that because I don't know if it's going to work this way, but I get excited the idea of maybe getting to sit with God of the universe.
You like crisscross applesauce?
Yeah, just sitting there, you know, with your best snack, whatever's there, you know, and like I think of it as like looking back at all the videos and getting to see his perspective on like what actually happened. Like I got like a mental list of heaven questions, you know, like think about, dude, did Adam have a belly button? Like if he didn't have parents, you know what I mean? Like it's one of the heaven questions, you know, and like you're not gonna be able to answer that. And so I just think about this and I rest knowing that I'm not knowing, because I've thought and realized that like if I could understand everything from A to Z about God, you know, he wouldn't be God. Because the idea of God is that like God can only be God because we don't know everything. We have to trust in that he's God.
Yeah.
Because if we could understand and comprehend and think the same way he did about every single thing that he is, we'd be equal, therefore not God. Therefore he's not God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that is where I've just rested. Like, man, he's God and I'm not. And I love that. There's a book in the Bible, Habakkuk, whatever you want to say. People say it all different, but like, he wrestles with God. The whole book is this interchange of his prayer. You know, he's like this, he wrestles. Why this? Why are the evil succeeding and the good failing? Why this? All these very relatable stuff. But at the end of it, he just rests that God's God. He's like, well, even if the trees don't produce fruit, even if my fields don't produce grain, even if this, even if that, I'll still trust you because you're good. You know, like, and that's where I've found, I'm thankful that I've came to a place, and it's not easy. Like, I didn't just wake up one day and like, I'm good now. I trust God. Like, it's a wrestle. I'm always, you know, like, I think the common misconception is that a lot of Christians aren't questioning or aren't wrestling. And that's why, like, I love conversation with Ricky, because like I was saying earlier, Ricky has such a gift. You have such a gift at like challenging. We somehow can, like, with that conversation the other day, got me so excited because there's a way to challenge without hurting the others or getting offensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And I just like, I love the challenges.
No, it's I've really enjoyed this extension of the conversation.
Yeah.
I see even different perspectives from than the last conversation we have, which was an amazing conversation. No, I love this has been great. Like just listening and taking it in for the same reasons it's beneficial to you or rewarding to you. This has been rewarding to me, and I really enjoy this.
Yeah, I love the bouncing thoughts back because I mean, I think it's all right to say that like you don't believe what I believe, and I wouldn't say I believe what you believe, but that's all right. And like pushing it down, if you attacked me with your beliefs or I attacked you with mine, it
gets us nowhere.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And like I always think of it like it's funny you mentioned Laura and like the long game. Like how weird would it be if I knew that guy that's like over like I love you, I love you, I love you, and if the girl was like I don't want this, like that's weird. You know what I mean? And like that's how it is with this.
That's a restraining order.
Right. Yeah. That's weird. If anyone listening to this didn't know that was weird, it's weird. All right. And like, so like
dropping
in that
knowledge.
In that same way, I think about God and I'm like, well, God loved us so much that he didn't be the weird guy to force it down our throat. He's like, I'm here. I love you regardless. I'm going to stay back. And if you want it, I'm here. You know what I mean? Like he displayed it before, and in the same way as different beliefs, what I mean? Like the only way you'd ever believe what I believe is if you came to it on your own. I can't. So it's pointless to argue. And like you said about Jesus, one thing I love looking at Jesus, like he never argued back. He just asked questions. I love it. Like, and like someone would say something, they'd try and trap him. And no matter how trapped he seemed, he was never like, well, screw you, man. You don't like it. You can leave or something. He was like, he's like, well, would you do this or would you do that? And they're like, oh, crap. Yeah. And I just like that. I like that he wasn't insecure in his belief. And I think a lot of the angst and the anger that people put towards people that challenge their beliefs and Christian beliefs. I mean, all religions, you challenge it, people get upset, but and Christianity, I think a lot of that, if I'm truthful, comes from insecurity in their own belief.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and like that is like, like if we go back to the race car example, this is going to sound stupid, but it's true. Like someone could come up to me and be like, Charlie Brown's slow.
Yeah.
Like, no, he's not. You can think, okay.
You can think what you want, but
yeah, you can think what you want, but I got the time tickets. Apparently.
Well, till that intake valve shot off to the moon.
Yeah, till that intake valve. Yeah, the Holy Spirit took that one. Yeah. But it's, I'm confident in what our race car is, and I'm confident about how fast it is. And you can say whatever you want about it. It doesn't matter. And, that's kind of where I've got personally in my walk with Jesus is like, man, I know who God is to me, and I know what he thinks about me, and I know how excited I get when I'm talking to him and when I'm leaning into what I believe that he has for me. I mean, you can't take it from me.
Yeah.
Like it's an untakeable thing.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's fine to question and talk because dude, we're all on this spinning rock together, and it's like, think about that, bro. We're on a spinning rock in the middle of a thing that has Charlie Brown shooting intake valves off into the shooting stars. Dude. You know what I mean? We got I mean, this whole it's like it's a crazy deal.
Well, and that's what I'm saying about people. I think people are afraid to acknowledge they don't know, like about any of it, Christian, not Christian. Like you said that, like we're on this spinning rock, right? And like we're tilted at this angle. If we were one bit closer to the sun, we'd all burn up. If we're one bit away, we all freeze. And like, I don't know how that got there. All right. I believe what the Bible says. I believe God intentionally created things, right? I like thinking of God as a creator. It's cool. Like, that like I'm like a big, I love the outdoors. I love action sports and mountain biking and hiking and all these things. So like, I love seeing all these things about nature and thinking about God's thought in creating it. I don't know why he created it. I don't know why he created mosquitoes, but They're there. And like, again, it's like, I just have, I don't know, but it's just also though, but if we all just took a step back and realized like, it's crazy. Like, I mean? Like,
it's crazy.
I love God. I truly believe God is real and that he's with us and he loves us and that there's purpose in these things. But even within that, the fact that I'm on this spinning rock, perfectly angled, even though I believe God placed it there, that's still crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a crazy thing to do. You know what I mean? And like, even if I believe God is a creator, think about like with no understanding of anything we have, if someone was like, hey man, will you make that rock for me just right now? Like, that's crazy. I can't do that. You know what I mean? And so like, however you think it got there, I believe God, but maybe we should all start by going, maybe we don't know as much as we say we know. And I believe my stance, which may be wrong, and I don't know how many people watch this that are Christian or not Christian. Christians might get upset at this, but I believe a lot of Christians should maybe get better at saying sorry, and saying, I don't know. And I'm sorry for me or the people in history. Because, if we believe what the Bible says, we believe that Jesus is the head of this body and we're all part of the body, and our goal is for people to love, for God, to feel God's love truly like Jesus did. So if someone hurt them in past or in history did something bad, we take ownership for that, or we should.
Yeah.
Because that's part of our body. And so in the same way, I believe maybe instead of getting so angry and defending our point, that really, if we were really go behind the scenes, you might not even be that confident in that point. But we just get better at saying sorry. Go, man, we're sorry for, the Crusaders that came and killed all these people, and what they believed was a very important reason. Yeah, that wasn't right. We're sorry.
Yeah.
We're sorry for all the priests in Catholicism and all these things that are doing terrible things and representing God. That is not good. And I personally, as a Christian, on behalf of other Christians, is sorry for that. And like, I think there's a level here of like, when we acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, and that we're all here by the grace of God, I believe by the grace of God, and that he loves us and he's walking with us in the process, then like that sorts a lot of stuff out right there. When you have the humility to be like, dang, you're right. That was really wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That fixes a lot of stuff right there.
Well, and I think even to bring that to just a general level, even if you take God out of it and you're just a humble person that admits when they're wrong and like just carries themselves in that kind of way, man, look how far you'll go in life, bro. Like, you will go so much farther. Like, because people want to be around people like that, and people want to help people like that. And like, man, that's just good, solid advice.
Yeah,
it's just good, solid.
That's the takeaway. It's like, man, you're humble, and it does things. You know what I mean? And yeah.
What an awesome conversation. There's so many things just racking in my brain right now. I feel like I've learned a lot about myself in this conversation, and that's a beautiful thing. Like, and just relating, I've said it a bunch of times and I believe it to my core, but I'm seeing it in a new light of like, man, I'm no different than you. Yeah. You're no different than me. Like, I've said that after traveling and going to different cultures and different places, but even just in my own backyard and in this room, and that's why, there's always been a mutual level of respect with Jason and I in our conversations. And now, this beautiful mutual, I've very much enjoyed listening to hearing you talk and your perspective on things. But just relating, like, again, how beautiful and crazy this life is, that whether you believe your beliefs of a God created this, and still being able to admit, like, this is just crazy. Like, I haven't heard a Christian perspective of that, I don't think. And that, like, man, this is crazy. And then as a non-believer, a believer of time, and that we're just as crazy, but like how beautiful and crazy that is, whatever way you look at it. Like, it is insane that we get to sit in this room, have this conversation, have these feelings, have these thoughts. Like, it's beautiful that from different belief systems, we can still have that you know?
Yeah.
And even in just like getting lost in those things and coming back to being the humble thing, like, you know, I'll admit, you know, there's a lot of things in life that I'm working through and seeing new openness to things. And that's a journey of itself. Like, and even not having the beliefs, like forgetting sometimes how beautiful that we even get to experience this life. Right. Like, but then coming back to that is like such a good thing, whether it's coming back to God, the conversations you've had and losing sight, you start to sink, or as a person that doesn't have a belief in God, like just coming back to that belief of like how fortunate it is that we get to, like, it's easy to lose sight, whether you believe or don't believe. It's like, it's cool to make that connection in this conversation. Like I said, I feel like I've learned a lot about myself in this hour, and I appreciate you for having the conversation of this and just having the openness and being the person that you are. And, you know, whether saying, you know, you're a good representation of a Christian, which I believe that because I know you are a Christian and that's true, but I just believe you to be a good human. And and Jason, same too. This is not one-sided. You're a beautiful daily example in my life. So yeah, this has been, I really enjoyed this. And
yeah, I think if we keep going back, taking the steps back, what you just said, like you were saying, it's just amazing that we're even here.
Yeah.
You know, and like,
insane.
I think like these things, like if humility is our goal to get to that, you know what I mean? That like, all right, that's where we want to start because of the purpose we believe is important. It's got to start with humility. And to start there, I think really it's got to be, you got to have gratitude, like thankfulness, that because there's this, this book from like the 1400s, and this dude, it sounds real intense, but it's called The Dark Night of the Soul. And he basically describes his walk and questioning with God as valleys and mountains. He's like, it doesn't make any sense. He's like, you walk with God, it feels amazing, life's changing, awesome. This is like 1400, right? And so he's like, but then for no apparent reason, it seems to dry up. You don't feel like God's there as much. You don't feel like he's as close. You don't feel that love or whatever that high was. And then you're in the valley. But then for no apparent reason, in some amount of time, you know, later in life, you're back on the mountain and you feel like, wow, man, I'm with God. God's awesome. And then you're back, you know, and he said, it's not until you're at the end and you look back and realize it was all a gift. And like, that is my daily personal struggle, is trying to remember this is a gift. You know, I say this, I realize this now, like being engaged, like we talk about that not being perfect. Like, I'm sure if anyone's watching this that's married could understand way more than I understand right now. But one thing, if anything, engagement has showed me is that I thought I had a lot of stuff pretty good. And I now having a person there every day to be an active gauge on how I'm doing on things, especially a very, very high quality person, has shown me that like, well, man, I have so much to work on. And that sometimes that's not fun. And then I get all bogged down and I'm like, gosh, it's a lot more fun when I'm ignorant and I'm just at the skate park and I don't have to think about these things. But I'm always my wrestle is trying to remind myself what I get to do, even at the cost that it is, the struggles, the hardship, the uncomfortable. What I get to do is such a gift. And like Laura, she pushes me and it's hard and it's challenging and I don't want to admit a lot of my problems, but I'm always trying to take another step back and go, man, it's a gift. It is a gift that I have someone like this, that I have that gauge, that I get to, you know, and because when you start with gratitude, like one of the best things a guy said to me, he was like, I look at it a lot different. Instead of, am I doing enough? Am I doing that? Am I doing this? All these things. He's like, if I get to do anything, I'm stoked. Because he's like, the fact that we're even here doing this, so your body has like a couple million functions a minute. I don't know, that's probably wrong. But like, you know, somewhere around there's a lot happening in there. And I heard that it only takes a few of them to go wrong for you to die. So like, you look at it that way, you're like, that's pretty intense. Like, we're thankful to be here. And so like, I'm always trying to take a moment and be thankful and like, man, I'm so thankful I'm here. And like, because I believe in Jesus and I believe that he is peace, that he is the way, that what he says is true, it comes to another level of thankful that I'm like, man, I can't solve these on my own problems. I can't solve the world problems, but like Jesus can. And so I come to this place of just like, man, I'm so thankful that he loved me, even though I suck sometimes, most times. And like, he loved me even when I'm not doing it right. I'm like, that is another level of gratitude. And when you start a gratitude, you're like, well, then who am I to get up? You know what I mean? Like, I love, one of my favorite books in the Bible is Jonah, because Jonah is crappy. And like, his whole time, he does the opposite of what God asked him. He runs, he does all this stuff. And his whole thing is not because he didn't like God, it's because he hated the people God loved. God was like, go to these people. I love them. I want them to know me. And they're in a bad way. They're doing bad stuff. They're heading down a bad, because God knew in his knowledge, like we said, God knew that Nineveh was going to, if they didn't change their ways, they were going to get destroyed by a greater, well, not a country at the time, but, people. And God sent Jonah. He's like, go to Nineveh and tell them to turn from their ways, or else it's going to be bad. And Jonah wanted them to die. He hated them. And so I love that book because it always reminds me that I have no right. I can't tell someone they're wrong, because Jonah was disobedient the whole time. He was selfish. He was a coward. He constantly steered away from trying to go to these people. Fair enough, because they were brutal. They were like killed a lot of people, but still. And then God saved them. Unfortunately, later on, they still went back their ways and got taken by that larger power. But for a long time, a span of time until the next generation, they did seem to do okay based on what we know. And anyway, this is another thing. But Jonah's so angry at God because he saved them. He's like, I knew this is what you'd do. I knew if I went, you'd be good to them. And but God like basically puts him in his place, and he's basically is like, who are you to say that they don't deserve my love? Like, you've been bad this whole time. And that's kind of like, I'm always trying to step back and be thankful that like, man, I'm thankful I'm here. And because of that, brings that humility that like, well, if I deserve it, they definitely deserve it too.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the starting point for going and trying to get involved in missions, is I'm like, man, I'm so thankful for what God's done and for the life. Like, I've made so many stupid decisions. Like growing up, I didn't grow up like rich. I made a lot of bad decisions. I'm definitely not the smartest, definitely not the most understanding, but somehow by the goodness of God, I believe, I'm like, amazing things have happened. And so that's what started the drive to go, is I was like, when I realized how grateful I was for what God's done, it brought such a, whatever the word would be, such a feeling of like, man, I want them to have that. Like, they deserve it. If I deserve it, then they definitely deserve it, because they're awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, I think that perspective of that's the heart of loving people, is not judging who we think deserves God's love, and coming to the understanding that God is ridiculously unbiased of who he wants to love.
Yeah.
Because he wants to love everyone. And we cannot understand that. We think that we have in our brain the ability to understand who God wants to love and who we should lean into.
Yeah.
And that is not true. God wants to love everyone. He wants to love the people that are on the other side of the world that you're there. And guess what? If you're watching this, or you come into a race car event, or you come to something that, you're good on money, you're good on all these things, God wants to love you too. There's no discrimination in who God wants to love and how he wants to love them. There's none. We are the ones that put the discrimination, what would I call it? Like the stipulations on it. We're the ones that add
the filters of what.
Absolutely. We're the one that we think that we got to control the Instagram filter, the whatever. It's not true.
Yeah.
God loves the unfiltered version of these people, or the person, and wants to be involved with them. And through that involvement and through that love, those people hopefully truly understand that God cares for them. And from that thought that God cares for them, people want to lean into what God has for them. And it's not the other way around. Like, I don't do the things in my life because I feel like God's up there with a magnifying glass. I do the things in life because I know that God loves me.
Yeah.
And I want to do more because I know, and like, yeah. I mean, so to wrap it all up into a bow, if you want to support what Joren's doing, we're going to have a number of different things that will add. And there'll probably be a little add-ons at the end of this podcast, maybe just me talk or Rick talk. But Rick will drop. You have a link. The other crazy thing that I want you to know is that Joren lives on 100% support of other people. Okay, so not that he's not out there working hard, because obviously you can hear and see and hopefully even feel it, that you're out there working every day to do something to change the world. You're a world changer. That is what you are.
That's intense.
Well, you are. And pressure. You're out there regardless of what you believe. We can all agree that you're doing good for this spinning rock that we're on. And you're doing a lot of things that people wouldn't do. You're doing you're asking questions that a lot of people would not ask. You are willing to be uncomfortable when most people want comfort. So I think it's our job as a facet of people that if we're unwilling to do the things that you're willing to do, we should support you. And that's what I'm challenging you to do, is obviously support is, if we just cut to the chase, it is a financial thing. You're doing this for free, bro. Like, you're out there living.
I'm paying.
Yeah, you're paying. Yeah. You still get tax bills.
Yeah, I still get taxed to do what I do, even though I don't live here.
Which is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's a long podcast in and of itself.
Sorry.
But Ricky's gonna drop a link. You can donate right to him. I would rather also just put up your PayPal, because he has like a tax deductible link. So if you're like a business and you want a tax deductible thing, he can provide that. But to be completely transparent with you, when you give in the tax deductible way, he just doesn't get as much. So I'm asking you to trust what he's doing. And I pray I hope through these last two conversations that you can better understand who he is. Just send the dude PayPal. Just whatever that, we're not selling you holy water. We're not, if you want us to put some bottled water in the mail, whatever. But just,
I'm not doing that. Jason can do that.
just donate to him, whatever you feel like. Again, this is not us standing and shaking a bucket in front of him. But if you were at all moved from this conversation or in conversations, please do something about it. We pay for far stupider things.
Well, I just want to say something quick on that. I know we got to wrap it up. I really like what Jason just said. Obviously, I'd be lying if I said I would 100% really appreciate the support. I live on very minimal, the amount I make is barely nothing. And but I just want to say some things on it. Firstly, I didn't say anything I said in these past two podcasts hoping that it'd stir something so at the end I'd get money. We don't. Yeah, I know. I don't want it to come off that way, because I honestly, I don't care if you give me money or not. It definitely would be helpful for what I do, because it sucks because the situation we're in, it takes money. You know what I mean? You can't fly to these places, you can't stay long with these people, and you just can't put 60 hours a week into something and still have a full-time job to try and fund that. It's the world of nonprofit is a hard place to be. So funding is huge, and it's a thing I wish it wasn't needed, but and just for people that might be wondering, well, why don't I get paid? Is because firstly, missions is a self-funded thing. And so, and especially in Christian missions, it's the same way, I live the same way a pastor would live. That people come to a church, they love what the pastor's doing, the work the pastor's putting in, these things. They give to the church pays the pastor. I'm in the same boat, but without the church in the middle. It's people directly to me, which is very logistically crazy But
that's an understatement of the century.
Yeah, but beyond money, I just want people to like be encouraged by this.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, even if you don't gotta give to like, and just, if you got questions or something from this, like get a hold of me, like it even without money, you know what I mean? And that's why supporters that do support me, like I have people that support me monthly and I'm so thankful for that, but I never tell them a number I need because I want it to be something truly from their heart because they love what this is and they want to help the cause. It's not me. It's not giving to me because it's like, well, you're awesome, dude, so I'll give to you. It's giving to this bigger thing. We're really trying to help. And the best way I ever heard it put was like earlier when we were saying what's the biggest problem in the world, and ultimately it's evil. And I believe what I'm doing and what we're trying to do is push back that evil, and the best way I ever put it is if you think of like World War II in the U.S., there was all these soldiers going, but at the state and the U.S., there was all these people, women, children working in. Everyone was a part of the war. That if there was people building bombers, women were riveting things together, children were helping, people were using their income to buy war bonds, all to support and send supplies to the soldiers that are out there doing that. And so if you look at it, if all those soldiers went and no one was back home sending what they needed and helping them from the ground, from the back, they would have lost the war. And the same ways, if all those people made all those bombers and tanks and stuff and no one went to fight, they would have lost the war. So it's a thing. And so like really my heart isn't just to get money, it's to involve people in this process. I know that not all people are in a position in life they can go to these places and be face to face with this, or to be able to teach the Bible every day or whatever it may be, but my heart isn't just to get money. It's to involve people in that process so they can know, because like Jesus talks about that, like it'll be credited to them.
Yeah.
That like I'm not going to stand in front of God and he's going to be like, wow, man, you did awesome. Somehow it all worked. He's going to be like, man, and then he's going to step to them and be like, man, it's because of you that did this and this, this. And that's not manipulation. It's just that I want people to feel like if they give something to what I'm doing, they're a part of this process for the greater purpose.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, and then we'll end on this. There's a reason that, and I'll take it back to drag racing because this is a drag racing podcast.
So we've really, yeah.
But there's a reason that anytime that we post something about Charlie Brown or a race that we're in, or when Rick won Danger Wheel or whatever, we say the word we. Mm. And when we pushed Ricky down a giant tricycle hill, there was a pile of people behind him that not only push him out as fast as we could push him, but to literally cheer and chant him down the hill. And we even chased him a bit because he was our representative that we sent down the tricycle hill. And he won because we were behind him. That's what you're on, our tricycle, bro. Or you're in the driver's seat of Charlie Brown, the coolest nitrous car in the planet. Yeah. But when I see a picture of us on the starting line of Danger Wheel, or someone just posted a picture of Charlie Brown on the starting line of Turkey Bash, and to see the people that are around it that are pushing it, that the company's on the back glass, the thing, that's all we're doing with you. We are pushing you down the racetrack. That's how I want you to think about this, that you are our representative that we've pushed. So, and we're happy to push you. Yeah. We love pushing you. And I hope we push you so fast that you get a belt like Ricky.
Yeah.
But that's it. Rick can put all the different links, all the different ways that you can help him. If you just want to shoot Joren an email, his email's there. You can send him, if you find him, stalk him on Facebook or however you end up. I promise you, he's as genuine as what he's saying. Like, he will answer your email. Or if you have a question for us, email us, call us, whatever. It's no big deal. So.
Yeah. I'm always, like we said, we like love questions. Love it's good. So
It is.
But we love you. Anything last thoughts, Rick? Good?
I'll ask questions after off camera. I got to pee so bad. Let's wrap it.
We love you. Bow, bow, bow.